in the chat or raise your hand, or we always record it for purposes of distributing the message, making sure everybody else gets to review this information. Hello, everyone. It is 11 in the morning, and it's Friday. So you guys are going to have a great weekend. I'm sure you've already planned. The topic today is not a very sunny topic. It's not one of my favorites, I should say. But nevertheless, because it's happening so often in our nation, we need to discuss it. We need to put these plans in place. So workplace violence programs and whether or not you're in violation of a Cal OSHA standard. I want to first of all thank Annie and UCLA, UCI, Southern California, and NIOSH Education and Research Center for the time and effort they take in putting these courses together. You guys are awesome. Thanks for bringing the safety message across our communities.
Thank you. You do all the heavy work.
You guys are great. Thank you. And remember that Lindsay and Annie continue to send out messages and emails on any awesome classes and certificate programs that they offer. So don't hesitate to ask them. We also do bilingual classes, so feel free to ask, send emails. And after this class, if you have questions that relate particularly to your industry, especially those of you today in healthcare that may be questioning whether or not your program is up to par with the regulation. And if you get any questions in regards to the record keeping issues, the reporting issues that are specific to healthcare, you can ask me any questions, although I have great resources for you today. My information is on the screen. I know some of you want to have my authorization number. You can also check it with the OSHA.gov trainer base database. So my name is there for those of you that want to check on that. I've been doing these kinds of seminars 10 hours, 30 hours since 2011 that I opened up my consulting firm. And we've been working for years now together with the UCLA, UCI, Southern California Education and Research Center. So I'm very grateful. Let's get started. Remember, the session's being recorded, but this is for informational purposes only. I'm a facilitator, right? What that means is we facilitate information so that you have it at your fingertips and you're able to put together programs that are Cal OSHA compliant because we're in California. But I've also traveled around the country, and if you need help with any of your compliance programs in Oregon, because I've been to Oregon, I've done 30-hour, 10-hour classes in Oregon, Washington, Arizona, they also have their own plan. Let us know and we can help you out. We have 3 learning objectives, but we always give a bit more information than what we list just because we want to make sure. And sometimes if I don't cover something, bring it up to the screen and say, hey, you didn't tell us about this. And sometimes if I don't know something, I will look it up for you. The point is that we want to make sure you get the information. That's the main thing. This is about safety. This is about keeping everyone at work, not just compliant with the regulations, but safe. So number 1, listing the types of organizations in California that are mandated to have a workplace violence in place. Number 2, describing the elements of an anti-bullying policy and how it relates to your workplace violence program. So I've had questions lately about anti-bullying policies and harassment, anti-bullying and harassment policies, and if it's mandated or not. And how do you put that together, So if you don't have legal counsel, you will find that you have to put something together and get a statement from model program. So I will give you some examples today. Cal OSHA doesn't have a model program just for general industry outside of healthcare. They don't even have a healthcare one, but they do tell you all of the elements and what you should have. And there's one out there by, I think it's administrative offices by Cal OSHA, and it's a good program. It's an old one, but it's a good one. So I will show you that sample program. And the last one, reviewing the requirements for organizations regarding workplace violence policies and programs. So let's talk a little bit about why we do this and just a brief moment to just take it all in, the seriousness of this topic. I was talking to my husband when I was putting together this presentation, and the truth is, to have 71 mass shootings in the first 6 weeks of the year in our nation is appalling. I mean, I really don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. As you study this and as you click here and you click there, you will see that we've had this problem for a long time, but it wasn't so frequent. It was more rare than frequent. And to have 71 mass shootings in the first 6 weeks of 2023 fills me with sadness, fills me with frustration. My heart goes out to victims, to everyone affected, to the communities that will never be the same. I will leave it up to you to look under many of these cases. As you do your research and as you put together your programs and your plans, you will see that preparing in case of a mass shooting is just one portion of your program. And especially if you're a school district, you should have one already. But many of us don't practice it. And that's where you will fall out of compliance, because there is confidence in training. If you do not train your people, if you do not practice your drills, if you do not tell them what exits to use, if you do not tell them what their gathering point is or what to do in each of the situations, they've never practiced it. So when the emergency occurs, they will not know what to do.
How about we got a question asking if there has been 71 incidents or 71 victims of mass shootings.
No. This is 71 mass shootings, events in the first 6 weeks of the year. This is what's unbelievable. And that's why you notice me pausing more than I usually go faster than a mile a minute, because there's so much to share. But I just wanted you to stop for a moment and just really take it all in and feel the feelings, feel the pain. I don't like being a downer. You know me, I never talk in a way that it is negative and this and that. We already have too much going on in our lives, and the news are always, or most of the time, negative. But this does put everything in perspective. There's a need for us to do our part in our organizations, right? There's the compliance portion. We have rules. We need to have something in place. But then there is that other portion of this is already happening. We must learn from these mistakes. When you talk about the Texas shooting, what was the high school? I forgot the name. I just talked about it this morning with the word. It just went out of my mind. But hold on, a participant has no cause club shooting. And then I have here. Yeah, there has been 71 incidents. No 71 victims, 71 incidents of mass shootings. So either way, horrific. Yes, just the Michigan State University, there were 3 dead and more wounded. But if we talk about, there's been a lot of lessons learned since 1999. We've had shootings in schools. The famous Columbine High School shooting. Some of the victims were speaking out about it. This is 20 years after that shooting, and the scars and the communities are never the same. So just kind of a moment to pause and see how terrible this is, how pervasive this problem is, how we must really take action, right? And for those of you on this call today with me, we can do something. We can start putting policies that are strong. We can start practicing and drilling with people. We can start telling them what to do. We can start training because there's confidence in training, right? Repetition is key, especially with adults. We have so much going on in our lives. We need repetition. So there are some requirements for training. And some of you already have some programs, but you haven't reviewed them because nothing has happened and because you're not in healthcare and you don't have the requirement to actually review your plan annually. It's for healthcare, for those of you in certain industries in healthcare, we'll talk about it, like acute care hospitals, emergency services, anybody, correctional facilities, skilled nurse facilities, you have the requirement to have a workplace violence in place and the requirement for a review of this program annually to document your review. That's part of what you're required to do. For the rest of us, you may be thinking, well, I don't have the requirement because I'm not in healthcare. But you will see that under section 3223, which is the injury and illness prevention program, we're still required to provide a workplace that is free from hazards, right? To have this environment where people know that they're there to work, not to get hurt. And as we see on your screen, the statistics tell us or speak louder than words. So we have transportation incidents, 30% of those deaths, this is the most recent statistic, fiscal year 2021. 462 total fatal injuries. 30% of those in transportation incidents, which I always go back to saying, hey, you need to have, if you have vehicles, company vehicles, make sure you have fleet safety and a policy and a tight program to make sure that you are really overseeing how your drivers are driving. Then 22% exposure to harmful substances or environments. And your hazard communication programs need to be up to par. Violence and other injuries by persons or animals. There you go. So it's 18% is a huge portion of the pie. The third leading cause of death in California. There's different types of workplace violence. That's what we're going to talk about today. Different types. But if I can just let you remember, never forget, type number 1 is the one that deals with homicide and someone coming into your establishments, or like taxi drivers that get someone who's violent and commits crimes against them. That's type 1. Type 2 relates more to, clients, patients. That's where healthcare comes in, where you have the risk of dealing with clients, patients, members of the public that may get angry, or there some risk factors such as their mental health status. Correctional facilities, emergency services deal with this type of workplace violence, number 2. And number 3 is the one that is most prevalent in the workplace, and that's worker to worker, amongst others. Mass shootings are including here. Worker to worker, you're thinking, nah, we all love each other. We get along great at my place of work. The truth is, a lot of these issues start with simple teasing, with comments, bullying, and it escalates to harassment, and it may turn into violence. It gets to be quite subjective. So it is very, very important, crucial for us to get some good resources in order to really get a good handle on how to put together our policies. Workplace violence means any act of violence or threat of violence that occurs at the work site. The term workplace violence shall not include lawful acts of self-defense or defense of others. That's why now I'm getting a little bit, I need to see. I gotta see. What did I say that was the, give me a quick second. I wanted to see, because I want to keep talking about that incident. And I just can't remember the name, and I hate when I can't remember the name. Give me a quick Uvalde.
Yeah, I think
Uvalde,
Jean mentioned
yeah.
it in the chat. I just saw it, and yeah.
And the reason why I stopped right there is because of the workplace violence means any act of violence or threat of violence that occurs at the work site. Doesn't mean any self-defense or defense to others. In this case, the Uvalde became, children and teachers died. And that's what is appalling, why kids? But the response from police officers, and the response, and that's why I said There's confidence in training, and they know that because there's so much information and resources, the FBI, and there's many organizations that already have information out on how to put together training programs for not just police officers and responders, but for employers, organizations, school districts, etc. And one of the things is, in the cases of mass shooting, engaging the shooter as fast as police officers can will decrease the amount of deaths. And there were almost, 50 something minutes before they engaged the shooter in the Uvalde case. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So police are trained to deal with violence, and to very courageous people, to in spite of their fear, to actually take action. So that's why it says workplace violence does not include the self-defense or defense of others, because that's the position in which police officers would be at. But when we talk about us, our organizations, healthcare, our schools, our manufacturing places, our places of employment, we do need to take a look at what could go wrong. What kind of environment do we have? What kind of safety culture, in order to put emphasis on the things that we need. So type 1, no relationship to the workplace. That means it's somebody that commits a robbery or other criminal act, right? That's type 1. That is, according to statistics, 60% of here in California, of the workplace violence is type 1, homicides, that type of thing. Type 2 is clients or former clients, patients, customers, passengers, criminal suspects, inmates, prisoners. Very frequent, daily basis for some of you, more pervasive risk for service providers. Makes sense, right? And this is the reason why OSHA said we need a specific regulation for healthcare, those in the service industry that have a higher risk because of the mental status of their patients or clients, or because they do hospice, or because they do correctional facilities, or right? So it makes sense. High incidence in healthcare, psychiatric, and drug treatment workplaces and others. So that's type 2. And type 3, that's where you get the going postal, which, by the way, I'm going to give you the resource to this document by the FBI, where they talk about that term, and they talk about how it's really a myth, because going postal, the term was coined after a shooting occurred, and it was not heard of, but in real life, the numbers of people that go in and shoot postal workers are so low compared to what we're really experiencing nowadays. And you saw it first 6 weeks of 2023, and we already had a count of 71 mass shootings. So employee or relationship to an employee, former employee, current former spouse or lover, a relative or friend, or someone who's angry at your employee, basically, or that coworker to coworker issue. This is where your bullying, harassment, anti-bullying portion of the pie comes into place. This is where you do your analysis of what's going on in your organization. You need to say, well, we do have a culture here that we need to improve. And I say this because there are certain types of industries where you would see this a little bit more than in others, such as in construction, for example. Seeking revenge on a coworker or supervisor. So it happens a lot with disgruntled employees that have more things going on and maybe a mental issue, and then they come back and hurt people at work. Domestic or romantic dispute that spill into the workplace. Most prevalent type 3 event involves threats and other types of verbal harassment. Okay, so when we talk about resources, this OSHA fact sheet comes from the OSHA.gov. It applies to general industry. It's a good place to start to see, or to do a tailgate meeting about workplace violence. Like I said, it's very subjective, because, and especially with bullying, with bullying, you get to have, if you actually are good at getting input from your managers and workers, they'll tell you, but some people are able to take a joke and others are not. Okay, so that's where it becomes important for you to have statements and policies where you write out definitions of what bullying is to you, to your organization. So who's vulnerable? It's a good fact sheet. Let me take you there real quick. Who's vulnerable? Some 2 million American workers are victim of workplace violence each year. Can strike anywhere. No one's immune. Some workers are at increased risk. Among them, of course, people that deal with the public, deliver passengers, goods or services, or work alone in small groups during late night or early morning hours, high crime areas or community settings and homes where they have extensive contact with the public, etc. So you may be thinking, okay, this is a lot of great info, but how do I start? And the answer is walkthroughs. What do you mean walkthroughs? It means boots on the ground. It means you go out there and you start taking notes of your facility, of what you do. And if you have, let's say you do home health care, okay, the visits that your workers do to patients, to whatever they're doing, go with them. Find out who are the clients, patients that they see, what are the circumstances. They're writing out the risk factors. What are they exposed to? It means really truly knowing your facility. I did a walkthrough for a convent years ago, many years ago. And it was great because it gave me also experience into a different kind of setting, a convent. And these women were the most amazing nuns. They were so welcoming. They fed me. They were loving. They were awesome. They had 3 different front desks in their facility, in their compound. So those are 3 different entrances. And they had the issue that homeless would actually come and kind of set camp on their premises because they never said anything. They were so welcoming to everyone. But then again, during our class, during our actual, because they hired me 2 days, I walked the ground, I looked at their parking lots with very poor lighting. I saw they had no cameras. I saw they had all these areas where people can come in. I saw why the homeless set camp there. And I saw that all of them were so loving and wanting to just, on one hand, help people, but in another hand, they were concerned about their safety. That's why they brought me on board, and they needed someone to speak the truth and show numbers and say, this is what we need to do. And it's got nothing to do with you not being open-handed and with you not wanting to give. It has everything to do with also protecting your coworkers, etc. So it was a great eye-opening experience. And that's what I want you to take from this today. It really starts with an analysis of what you've got going on at your places of employment. I think I have hotel workers. Ms. Kalshus, I have 4 types of. I'm sorry. Yes, Annie, I do have number 4, which is the one where mass shooting comes into play. So I appreciate the comment. I might have erased that slide last night when I was making changes to my slides, and I do remember going overboard with the erasing. So yes, type 4, and that's where the mass shootings will fit in. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay. So that's one of the ones that you can use to start this chat with your facility if you haven't done it lately, if you haven't done any refresher training, etc. And then also OSHA.gov will have a full page dedicated to workplace violence. And remember, this is federal OSHA site. And the thing is, when I share federal OSHA sites, I know that it may be a little bit different from California, but I'm giving you resources. I'm giving you an overview of this whole thing. This page is very important for those of you not in healthcare, because you can get a lot of great resources, enforcement procedures and scheduling for occupational exposure to workplace violence, guidelines for preventing workplace violence for healthcare and social service workers. I want you to use that guidelines to supplement the actual requirements here in California for healthcare. The workers' safety in hospitals, caring for our caregivers, preventing workplace violence in healthcare. That's a beautiful, beautiful document. Taxi drivers, recommendation for workplace violence prevention programs in late night retail establishments. So if that applies to you, get these resources. This is great. And again, it goes through the actual definition. Who is at risk? How can workplace violence hazards be reduced? And in this page, you have a wonderful way to click a button and find out what do they mean with risk factors. It provides information, risk factors, scope of violence in the workplace to increase the awareness of workplace violence. A risk factor would be dealing with people with mental disorders. That increases the risk for that employee to ever be jumped by one of these, or bitten, or, assaulted, that kind of thing. And then how to put together your prevention programs, how to do training. And for enforcement, they have all this specific also tab. So this is good information. It really does help you guys who want to continue putting together a good program together. Now, this is the document I was talking about. This one you will love. This was put together by the Department of Justice, the FBI, in conjunction, and let me see if I can actually share the actual document with, let's see. It's in their page, the FBI page, workplace managing it, etc. Issues in response. So I love this document just for the fact that you can actually learn from somebody else's mistakes. Response, meaning, hold on. How can we prevent it before it happens? We need to do better, right? So I really like this document. I'll show it to you real quick. Preventing, planning, and strategic issues. So I love that because then it goes into a sample workplace violence policy statement. So what I said to you, a lot of this workplace violence, when you get into type number 3 of workplace violence, where we have the anti-bullying issues, you need a statement, you need definitions, you need help, you need resources, because it's very subjective, right? It's like, I don't know what bullying is to me, may not be to you, because you see what I mean? So this is very important because it'll allow you to get some policy statements and then go into questions in a threat assessment, sample threat assessment, what doesn't work. So learning from somebody else's mistakes, right? And so there's the actual message from director for but there's a lot of bits and pieces that are super, super important, for example, here. And there you go, the 4 types of violence. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, right? Criminals, type 1, nearly 80% of accounts for the vast majority of what we said, death at the workplace, 80%. But see, this is what is interesting. Preventing strategies for type 1 include an emphasis in physical security measures, like what? Cameras, lighting in your parking lots, things like that, that will deter someone from coming into your business and attacking or assaulting your employees. So that is not as hard as preventing bullying, for example. That is something that takes more thought, that takes an actual written statement, that takes a change in the culture. And the type 2 assaults by employee, by customer, patient, someone else receiving a service. Employees experiences the largest number of type 2 assaults are those in healthcare occupations, nurses in particular, as well as doctors, nurses, aides who deal with psychiatric patients, members of emergency medical response teams, hospital employees working in admissions, emergency rooms, and crisis or acute care units. Makes sense. In type 3 and type 4, violence in these categories is no less or more dangerous or damaging than any other violent act. But when the violence comes from an employee or someone close to an employee, there is a much greater chance. And listen to this. This is why I highlighted it. There is a much greater chance that some warning sign will have reached the employer in the form of an observable behavior. Isn't that interesting? Signs, behaviors. You're like, oh goodness, what does that mean? What do I look for? If you never talk about this topic, no one will know how to look for it. Nobody will know the signs. Nobody will know the behaviors. If you put together a policy and use these resources, then you'll have a list, for example, of what it means to have certain behaviors or some signs that cannot escape you. And when the counseling should have taken place, for example, when you talk about this before things happen and workers are brought to an awareness level, then they may come back to you, HR manager or safety manager, and say, after that class that you were talking about, just dawned on me that I had to come and talk to you because so-and-so has been going through a divorce and, he's been saying things lately that I just they didn't make sense. He or she is not like that. They were never like this before. And now I've noticed that they are not showering much. I've noticed that, you know, the demeanor, the way they used to look before, very presentable, clean, has changed over the past months. And I know it has a lot to do with that, but now I see a lot of anger. She or he rarely talks to me. And the other day we were at break, we were watching something, and in the news came up the Michigan shooting. He said, yeah, they deserve it. The things that were not coherent. And it just made me feel that I don't even want to be friends anymore, kind of. And I wanted to bring it up to your attention privately. These things start coming to your attention because you finally had that talk. You finally said, hey, we have this policy. And a lot of you, especially those of you in healthcare, you know that you've already had this, so you do it every year. But for those of you that haven't put together a policy, this is why it is so important. So important. And I love the chat. I love what you guys are putting up there in the chat. Okay, so I got to keep going. There's a lot to share. Lots to share. But that document, you will get it along with the slides, okay? Because I want to make sure you get all this info. It's a very long, lengthy document. It's got some great nuggets, golden nuggets. I'm so sorry. The regulation then. I started saying today that those of you that believe that you don't have a requirement to put together a policy for workplace violence or anti-bullying, you're wrong. You have to take a look at what's going on in your facility. You have to take a look at the 4 different types of workplace violence per the OSHA definitions, per the document I just showed you. And you have to take a look at what realistically happens or has happened in the past. Or if it hasn't happened in the past, you're going to see that happens in your type of industry. So statistics help. Taking a look at that will allow you to put together a plan and say, oh, I didn't know, for example, that we do have the issue of dealing with cash, and maybe someone could come in and assault my front desk person wanting to get that cash because they know we handle cash, that type of thing. So after you do your analysis, you have to say, okay, although I'm not one of those healthcare facilities covered under 3342, which is the actual section for the requirement for the program for workplace violence in healthcare, you still are required to have a program or a policy at minimum under 3203, which is the requirement for your injury and illness prevention program. You shall establish it, have it in writing. That program, the injury and illness prevention program, has a model with 8 elements that you can follow and put together your workplace violence policy. So once again, there's elements to the IIPP. All of you know it, especially if you've taken my class, my 2-day class where we go over each of the elements and how to make sure it is effective, because we go over exercises on how to make your injury and illness prevention effective, because that's what OSHA will go and interview your workers, making sure that it is effective. So responsibility, that's how a policy starts. Who's responsible? Who's managing and administering this policy? Then communication, how do we communicate? And that's key, because with workplace violence, you have to have an actual step-by-step process on how to report incidents of workplace violence. So compliance, how do you actually counsel people into complying with safety, workplace violence policies, etc. Then you get into how do you investigate issues of workplace violence, anything that has been reported to you. How do you go about fixing that so that you nip it in the bud? Has to be in writing. So this is for those of you outside of healthcare or outside the requirement under section 3342, which I'm going to talk to you about in a moment, right? You can have your workplace violence policy if you're not required by law under your IIPP. But I recommend to all of my clients that you have your workplace violence policy outside of your IIPP, because your IIPP is the program already that says, you know, this is how we do safety. This is how we make sure that people are complying with safety rules. This is how often we do inspections, because it's part of your requirement, element number 4. This is how often we correct hazards, how we correct hazards. This is how we investigate issues for safety. So basically, your workplace violence program, for those of you outside of healthcare and mandated by 3342, are required to still have a policy with the same elements as your IIPP. I didn't mean to skip that. This one These are the Work Safe BC videos, and they're very helpful. I have always liked them.
Morning. Where you going? I'm picking up the propane heaters. Is it left or right? What do I look like, dispatch?
Don't they tell you guys anything?
Yeah, they gave me the location. And you're here.
I think it truly often starts as innocent teasing.
Guys, seriously, is it left or right?
Oh, look at that. It's break time.
It gets bigger and the comments get harsher and it gets more personal. And at some point, the line is crossed. They call you an idiot, they call you stupid, kind of get bumped around like you're not the person on the crew that anybody wants and everybody jokes about it. And it kind of gets to the point where now you're getting bullied and harassed by the whole crew.
It's just a nightmare because it's not that they don't want you there, is that they want to have some fun at your expense. They want you to sweat. They want to see you make mistakes. They want to see all that stuff happen. And it's for their entertainment.
What's said escalates each time, and each worker tries to outdo what the last guy said to whoever the target is. And pretty soon the crew are doing things and saying things that they would never dream of doing or saying, in a normal setting.
It's a toxic environment to be in if there's bullying and harassment going on all the time.
It poisons everything. It affects everyone. It's not just the construction site. You're going to take it home and now you're driving in traffic and you might get in a traffic accident because you're distracted, or you're going home and you yell at your kids and then your kids think you don't love them. And it's just that ripple effect where it absolutely affects everyone when bullying and harassment happens. It's not insular, and it's not just the people involved. It is literally that ripple effect where it affects everything.
I can remember days where I didn't really want to pick up the phone and call to see if I was working because I really didn't want to go in. But the pile of bills on the end table said I had to pick up the phone.
I really wonder how many really good employees I've lost because of bullying. I'll never know.
You feel lonely, you feel depressed, you feel extreme states of sadness, you feel confused, you feel angry, you feel completely emotional.
I used to go off in the bathroom and lock myself in and cry because I was so angry that I was either going to hit somebody or I'd cry. And I wasn't about to hit people, so I would just go off in a corner and cry. Then wash my face and go right back to work because I needed to provide for my son.
There's nothing worse than walking in a room and everybody's giving you a bad time. There's no positive feelings that arise out of that. If you don't feel like you belong there, you start to believe what they're telling you.
You may not like the people that you work with, but you have to maintain a certain type of professionalism.
I teach the girls to look at these guys and say, would you like it if somebody said that to your daughter? Would you like it if somebody said that to your wife? And it tends to change the guy's perspective because all of a sudden there's this young woman who's standing in front of them and say, wait a minute, that's not okay with me. Stop it. And would you say that? And would you like your wife to know that that's what you're saying to a young woman?
It's harassment, really, because the next person beside them, they'll treat completely different because of the gender, right?
Bring it in. When I was a young foreman, we had a really good young apprentice on our crew. No matter what he did, he was picked on for it. He was nitpicked on the crew. Nothing was ever good enough.
We good? Yeah, sure.
I found myself saying stuff to the young apprentice that was said to me when I was a young apprentice. And it was when I heard myself saying that stuff when I realized that the culture had to change on our crew.
Walter, you not see the lines?
I think I wasted a lot of energy on being the wrong type of leader.
Who wants to go beyond the call of duty for someone that screams and rants and raves at you all day long? Who says that you don't know what you're doing and you don't have the skill set and you're a loser? How does that motivate you to to work hard, and to be committed. It doesn't.
Was it bullying to me? No, I don't think I thought about it that way. But when you think of how much you really yell and drive guys, there is bullying in there.
The supervisor can't be the problem. If the supervisor and our supervision remain to be the problem, then nothing's going to change.
If you stand by, you're saying that it's acceptable for what's happening. And to me, if you're saying it's acceptable for that to happen, then you're just as culpable for what's happening as the person who's doing it.
It's about being professional, having a professionalism in your workplace. We want to teach people now. We want to make sure everybody's working safely, everybody's comfortable in what they're doing.
We want zero accidents. And if bullying or being harassed is getting into somebody's head, they're going to make a mistake sooner or later. And that's something we don't want.
Our jobs are dangerous enough. You cannot bring that extra level of distrust into a job. You cannot.
Bullying is something that has to stop. Every smart CEO knows that. Every smart CEO has to ensure that it doesn't happen in their company, and they have to lead by example.
I've had, people say to me before, if we can't bully and harass people on the job site, all that's going to be left to do is put buildings up.
Okay, so it is not part of the job. I think We're Safe BC did a tremendous job with these videos. If you did not have a way to start this conversation and things like this are happening, these videos will do the trick. And I know some of you are thinking, well, we're not in construction. Then look within your own industry. A lot of you guys belong or have membership to your own contractors associations, brewery associations. You have resources that you're not tapping into. And it just really allows for this information. And mind you, a lot of the times when you start conversations like this, it's like opening up Pandora's box, and then you have a ton of reports. But it's okay. It'll be like that in the beginning if you haven't done so in a while, or it's something that you're barely starting. But then it dwindles down when finally your policy comes alive and it's effective. But if you don't start the talk and the conversation for fear that everyone is going to come now and complain and say something, I've been bullied, me too, and this, all of that, then you're doing your company, yourself, your coworkers a disservice. As safety directors or safety managers, our job is to look into these resources and start the conversation and put together these programs and to be effective. So a video, many times I will document that we played a 3-minute video just to kind of get a visual and words from somebody else's mouth as to what bullying and harassment is. And then we come with an actual statement on our part so that people start knowing the boundaries and knowing the definition within our organization. Now, when we talk about workplace violence within the actual requirement of 3342, it's a standard, it's a piece of regulation that applies to health facilities and there's a list, they call it subsection B, there's a list, I'll show you the list. Home healthcare, home-based hospice, emergency medical services and medical transport, including these services when provided by firefighters and other emergency responders. So they have to have this program by law, and it has to have certain things per the requirement. Drug treatment programs, outpatient medical services to the incarcerated in correctional and detention settings. There's a great fact sheet by OSHA regarding these requirements. And I want you to take a look at it after this class because it'll give you more clarity to those of you starting your program. If you, let's say, have a hospice or a skilled nurse facility type of organization. This one is 2-page and it's fantastic. It goes through the overview and actually a link to frequently asked questions. And then it says who's covered under the standards. It's got the health facilities, home health care, hospice, drug treatment, or patient. And then it tells you about the subsection B, which is the list. And I'll show it to you in a moment. It says acute care hospitals, just to give you an idea, acute care hospitals, etc. It's got to do with the number of beds, the definitions by the California Department of Public Health. Okay, creating the plan, identifying risk factors, and it talks to you about fixed workplaces versus non-fixed, where you have maybe personnel visiting homes or distributing, for example, devices, things like that. What are the environmental factors? What are they doing? What kind of clients do they serve? Emergency medical services and medical transport services must establish procedures for communicating with dispatching authorities to identify environmental risk factors present at the scene. So things that must be in place. So how do you communicate with dispatch? If you're in emergency medical services, that's a requirement. So it's not now left to the imagination and how to do it. Now it's very specific. If you're an emergency medical service, you have to have this specific way of communicating because you're going to get to a scene. How do you handle this before it gets out of hand? Who do you communicate immediately what you are handling at that moment? Patients and other persons or employers, all employers must identify and evaluate. That means us, the organizations, you have to identify and evaluate patient-specific risk factors, like mental status, the people that come see those people, that kind of risk factors, who are not employees. Patient-specific factors include a patient's mental status, history of violence. Okay, so there's more examples. Correcting workplace violence hazards. How do you correct this? And you start thinking and becoming creative, and who's, even I love doing training because then you guys get very, very creative. Oh, let's have code words, and code words work wonders, right? Alarms, things such as duress signals, mirrors, corner mirrors that allow you to see all those blind spots, or personal alarms with push of a button, panic buttons. So I like that these fact sheets have ideas, pictures, etc. Preparing for these emergencies, have an effective response plan for actual potential emergencies, including mass casualties. Didn't I just talk about that? This is where you come together to say, oh, one of those issues of workplace violence that could occur in my place of employment is mass shooting, right? And there's a myriad of information on how to handle this portion of the pie. The plan must include methods for evacuating or sheltering and procedures to warn employees of the situation and contact law enforcement. So you get from the non-sophisticated to the more sophisticated. A lot of you already have ways to text. It's a communication tactic where everyone gets distributed this message, where if there's a suspect or a mass shooting going on at a building and you work in the building next to it, because this happened at Michigan State, where the shooter was there and it spilled into the building next door. And through this communication tactic, you're able to send a message for people who are coming to work, not yet at the building, not to even show up. So these are where these things start coming into place. Responding to workplace violence, it tells you, such as requirements to provide first aid and care and trauma counseling to the people, the victims, the people that were there in the incident. Workplace violence prevention plans involving multiple employers. Sometimes you do have temporary workers. You have staffing agencies supplying you with a lot of your employees. What do you do in that case? They're yours. And I cannot say it enough. One of these classes that we held through UCLA, UCI, we talked extensively about temporary workers and the need to embrace them as your own, because although you do not pay them, you must train them in each of the hazards that they will encounter at work. The log requirements. So now there's a requirement for a specific log where you're going to log the incidents and you're going to write down when it happened, who was the person who committed the actual assault, the aggressor. That's the wording in the actual regulation. And then you have certain specific reporting requirements, 24-hour window for those that caused a death or serious injury or illness, and 72 hours for any others. And even if they did not get hurt, if no one got hurt, you still have the requirement under 3342 to pick up the phone and call Cal OSHA, right? Because they gather all this information. So there's the log, and there's a requirement for training. So you have to put together training that is effective, that allows people to know how to report these incidents and what to do during these incidents, when to activate alarms, and also how to respond and who should respond. Because in this particular settings, it gets a little bit more complex than any other settings, because you may have security people or designated teams to respond when, let's say, a patient with a mental health issue assaults an employee. Those assigned teams must have specific training on how to diffuse the situation, must have specific training on how to methods, techniques on how to help the situation. So now that's when you get into personal defense and other issues of what type of training do they need. Hospitals must report workplace violence incidents, meeting the following criteria to Cal OSHA, regardless of whether any employees were injured. So hospitals, The use of physical force against an employee by a patient or a person accompanying a patient that results or has a high likelihood of resulting. So even if they didn't get hurt, you have this requirement. You must make sure that you do report the incidents, violent incidents to Cal OSHA. So if you're a hospital, death, away from work, restriction or transfer to another job, medical treatment beyond first aid, loss of consciousness, significant injury or illness diagnosed by a physician, in an accident involving the use of a firearm or other dangerous weapon, regardless of whether the employee sustains an injury or not, right? And then it tells you the window. You have to report it within 72 hours, except the following, which must be reported within 24 hours. And now remember, you also have that other requirement to report to Cal OSHA, right? Work-related death or serious injury or illness within 8 hours of somebody going for inpatient hospitalization, regardless of the time that they get to be admitted as a patient. So this is a great way to get you to confirm whether or not your actual programs are up to par. This is a great fact sheet. Print it out, take it to your nurse director, safety director, whoever is in charge of your workplace violence program, and start making sure that you are compliant. So the definition of health facilities in the regulation, and it gives you an actual requirement for general acute care hospitals, acute psychiatric hospital. This is the list that I said would be there. These are included. You're supposed to have a plan with all of the elements, the 12 elements. Skilled nursing facilities, intermediate care facilities, developmentally disabled, habilitative, and special hospitals, intermediate care facility, developmental disabled, intermediate care facility for the developmentally disabled, and nursing, congregate living health facility, correctional treatment centers, nursing facility, intermediate care facility, developmentally disabled, continuous nursing, hospice facilities. Everybody in this list, aside from these people, must comply with 3342, and your program must have all of the elements of the regulation, which are as follows. But let's see. So this started in April 2017. We know we're past all of this deadlines, right? You have to have a program in writing, and you have to review it every year. You have to provide training. I did say a video on reporting the basics. Okay, so you'll get the links. Hospital employers must report violent incidents to Cal OSHA starting July 1st, 2017. See violent workplace incident reporting system for hospitals. Let me take you there just so that you see how it works. So Cal OSHA has the actual how to get started page. So I love it. So knock on wood, you've never had to report to Cal OSHA, but now you know when, you know where to find it, and now you know the page where you can get step-by-step on how to submit these reports online. So you have to pre-register with Cal OSHA. Very good. So you get the tools. You're going to get a copy of my slides and all of these links so that you have the resources available to you. Once again, as every single one of these Cal OSHA required programs, it starts with who's responsible for them, who's going to administer this program. I gotta have somebody in charge, and that person has to get the help and the support from their teams, but you better write it out. You have to have effective procedures to obtain involvement of employees. And you go, what is that? It's an element of the plan. That means you are required by law to have a procedure to obtain active involvement. Well, how do I do that? Okay, so one idea, when you're doing training and you're sitting down with your managers and your nurses and your doctors, say, write it down. Write it down. Last month, we had this incident where so-and-so was assaulted and almost bitten by such and such patient. How can we prevent that? Well, you know, I've told you guys several times that the patient in such and such unit have more issues because, and then they start talking to you. That's what this means. Methods to coordinate with other employers, with employees working at the same work site. So this has to do with that issue of dual employment and staffing agencies. How are you coordinating? Because sometimes staffing agencies will send you a statement that they have already trained their personnel. They're yours. I don't care if they come with 1,000 hours of training, you are going to train them on the specifics of your hospital, on the specifics of your skilled nurse facility, your specifics. And you document that training, because otherwise that's going to get you into trouble. And when there's an investigation, if you respond, oh, well, I didn't include them in the training because the staffing agency said that they had already workplace violence training, and here's the list. It doesn't matter. You're still by law, you're still responsible. Those are your employees under your supervision. You must provide them specific training for the hazards you are exposing them to, even if you don't pay them. They're not on your payroll, that's what I mean. So, obtain law enforcement agency assistance at all times. How do you get timely enforcement agency assistance? How do you actually get employer to accept and respond to the reports of workplace violence? That's why I love the video and I let it play, because it really does apply to even healthcare. Many times when you don't have these discussions, it's what one of the men in the video was saying. It cannot be a supervisor who is the problem, because you are relying on them to bring these reports to you and to fix the problem. But if they are the problem, you have an issue of a safety culture and a bullying issue that is happening at a level in your facility that will be harder to correct. You cannot stand side by side and just don't do anything about it. You have to change it. Ensure compliance with the plan, supervisors and non-supervisors. This is an interesting one, because when you see elements like this and you just kind of go, oh yeah, we do have disciplinary policies, you know, if they go through verbal counseling. But the thing is, we haven't looked into, as organizations, we don't look into supervisor specific disciplinary policies to really hold them accountable, to expect more from them. Okay, and I have a couple comments there. What if the agency supervises on the warehouse floor with them, assuring the products and production quality? Oh, I love this, Chris. This is a very good point. So if your temporary workers, your staffing workers are being supervised by their own staffing agency supervisor, then they have to provide with the training as they get to your facility. And this is what's key. So that supervisor comes to supervise their own employees from the staffing agency. He has to have a way to prove that he provided training while at your facility, specific to your hazards. So it falls on them, not you, but the training still needs to be specific to your location. And I hope that makes sense. Very good. Great point. Communication between shifts, information about conditions that increase potential for workplace violence events, such as, you know, if you're doing a lot of changing of personnel during the shifts, how do they communicate to the next employee? What are the issues with the patients, the clients, the patients, the customers? So a clear way to say, this one just got a new medication, this one is showing blah, blah, blah. How to report to workplace violence events or concerns, so specifically step by step, etc. You can read each of the elements. My point is, and I hope you got it with what I'm saying, is these things to be effective need to come alive, need to be really something that happens in practice, not something that you just wrote out like, oh, communicating and reporting immediately to your supervisor. You know, whenever you have a doubt, you just talk to your supervisor, and then nobody does it because they don't want to look like they don't want to look bad. They don't want to look like a crybaby. No. Make it effective by bringing awareness, playing videos, doing the training, and then actually asking and going out there to say, hey, when issues of this nature occur, I need you to report it. And these are the steps, right? For example, and I put a sample policy wording, incident reporting procedures, call, and then you're going to put the number that they need to call. Plus 911 if there's a conflict or emergency situation, or if someone has been seriously injured, right? So here's where you're going to call your supervisor, you put their number, and you have these emergency numbers easily available to all workers at all times. Number 2, report all threats or acts of workplace violence to your supervisor or manager. If that is not possible, report incidents to your, and then, you know, this is step by step. Number 3, the supervisor or manager should complete an incident report form and give it to blah, blah, blah. So this is fantastic. And by the way, this specific policy wording is not for healthcare. It can be for your healthcare policy, no problem. But the reason why I say it's not for it, because it may or should complete. So you're giving that supervisor the option. I would change this. Supervisor is going to must complete an incident report form, where they write out, you know, in the form who brought it to you, and it's kept confidential, of course. But the information is gathered about, you know, the who's the person of concern, what's happening, the incident, the time, the date, etc. More in the elements of the plan, I told you is 12 of them, but we are ending today's presentation with forms and resources. I gave you publication 3148 is applicable to social services and healthcare. A list of environmental risk factors that you need to look at. Are your employees isolated? Is there poor illumination? That's why I said boots on the ground, guys. Take a look at what's happening in your buildings, your areas of work, blocked visibility, lack of physical barriers, lack of effective escape routes, accessing alarms, or they're blocked because you leave boxes and no one can escape your buildings. Location where alarms are not operational. That's why boots on the ground, test those alarms. Entryways with an unauthorized entry may occur, furnishings and objects that can be used as weapons, storage or valuables or pharmaceuticals. All of these are environmental factors that you need to take in account. Home healthcare or home-based hospice, changes in conditions, weapons, evidence of substance abuse or uncooperative cohabitants. These are still elements of the plan. You're required to look into this and make sure that you have a way to gather information about, you know, changes in conditions. This is important. Someone is showing up at someone's home to deliver equipment, and then they have to deal with someone with a weapon or who all of a sudden seems to be under the influence or of drugs, alcohol. How are you going to train your workers how to deal with this situation? And for the training, and there's more on you're going to get a copy of these. Like I said, definitions, what's an act of, it becomes really important for your policy to have these definitions, because then it puts it in a bubble for you. What does it mean to you? What a threat is? What does it mean to your facility with harassment or bullying? Bullying is all about to you, right? And remember that the document, the FBI document has great definitions. And also this one, I took it from, let's see where I took it. This is a sample policy that I took from OSHA's model program. It's an older model program, but they don't have a newer one for workplace violence. And so it's a PDF document, so it's a good one. It's this is for everybody outside of healthcare. So it's a good guideline for administrative units, for example, because this is for state of California administrative units. They're not healthcare and they have their own workplace violence program. So it's a great way to look at what we just discussed today, putting it all in a beautiful policy and make it work. That's your job. That's your homework. Okay, guys, it is 12 o'clock. We talked about the log and the requirement for a training program is mandatory. Involvement of your employees is mandatory. And then there are things included there, such as language, level of literacy. And key things here is if you're going to do it according to the regulation, make sure you document that you did it according to the regulation. Don't just have a roster with a bunch of names and signatures. Put the date, the time you started, the time it ended, the language, who did the training, right? Strategies to avoid physical harm. So there you can become creative. It just, OSHA is only asking you that you develop strategies to avoid physical harm. And now it is up to you to get those resources, techniques to diffuse violent behavior. You must have this in place because those are tools. And like I said in the beginning of today's training, there is confidence in training. So repetition is key, training is key. There's a link for frequently asked questions that I will send to you as well. Those were our objectives. We went ahead and completed them today. I am so grateful to you for your time. I hope that you are better armed and equipped to put together your policies. It is a job. It is truly a job that you guys are equipped to do. And I know you will have questions. Just ask me, send me an email. We're always open to answering those questions, even after the class. Thank you all. I'll see you in a month. And for those of you taking the classes, I think we have one silica dust exposure prevention and aerosol transmissible disease coming up. So thank you. I'll see you. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you. Thank you, Alba. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thank you. Everybody's so great. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Alba. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Enjoy your girls.
Thank you. Bye.
Talk soon.
See
Bye.
you. Bye.